Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here this evening. Let's start. Nikhil Ramaswamy, and CEO at Signer, a BITS Pilani alumnus. With Signer, he is currently working on the next disruption in manufacturing automation, with an excellent grasp on web technologies, much to bring to the table in terms of experience. Who is founder and director at Conquest.
Lavanya, I think your video and audio
Specializes in ITIL processes, brand and sales strategy, web application GUI, auto. Ask each of you to give us a brief introduction about your startup. Let us begin with link code.
Lavanya, I think we could not hear anything because your wireless connection is really poor. Is it possible for you to remove your video and reintroduce the guest? Because I got nothing out of what you said.
Okay, sure. Uh, uh, Hello, is this better?
Yeah, it is now.
Okay.
It is, yeah. We've lost you.
With Signer, he is currently working on the next disruption in manufacturing automation, with an excellent grasp on web technologies and a good blend of experience.
I think, Lavanya, there's a problem with the connection again.
Hello?
Yes, I guess there's some problem with your connection. It is a bit fluctuating. Yes.
Is this better?
Yes, this is.
Okay. So please do tell me if I'm not audible in the middle. And CEO at Signer, and he's a BITS Pilani alumnus. And with Signer, he is currently working on the next disruption in manufacturing and automation, on web technologies and a good blend of technical and sales knowledge. Nikhil has much to bring to the table in terms of experience. And we also have Harshal Katre, who is the founder and director at ProfitBooks.net, an online accounting and payroll management solution. With over 10 years of extensive IT experience, Harshal specializes in ITIL processes, brand and sales strategy, web application GUI and UX, product development and management, and has excellent insights on the same. So let us begin with the introductions of the 4 tech startups in our top 15. Can we have Rajesh giving us a brief on Linkcode?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lavanya. My name is Rajesh Nayangar. I'm the founder and CEO of Linkcode. We are a visual inspection company for manufacturing. We use primary AI and machine learning along with computer vision to identify product defects for the manufacturing systems. Prior to starting Linkcode, I had about 3 exits, 363 exits, a couple of them in the Bay Area. This is my 4th venture, along with my CEO, who was also my CTO in my last exit, and this is the second company together. And she was actually working in Microsoft ADP in the US before joining hands with me, and we are primarily solving manufacturing defects problems. We are into smart factory solutions, and then we are currently operating out of the US, Germany, and also in India. Thanks for having me here. Look forward for this evening.
Thank you, Rajesh. Can we have Ashish tell us more about Illier Solutions?
Sure. Hey guys, my name is Ashish Bajaj, one of the co-founders of Illier Solutions. Lavanya, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello?
And can I
Okay.
ask everyone to switch on their cameras?
Sure. Am I visible?
Yes, you're visible. Thank you.
Hey, so my name is Ashish Bajaj, and I'm one of the co-founders of Elliott Solutions. We are a company that lives, breathes, and eats the Internet of Everything. We built a platform called Coco, and the Coco platform is actually built to disrupt the cloud. We see the cloud have various weaknesses today in the world of IoT. And we believe that edge computing and edge first architectures is the right architecture. So we've built the edge first AI and IoT platform, which is called Coco. And to prove that this edge first architecture and platform works, we've actually built a full solution in the smart home space and digital living space. We sell our and license our platform to telecom companies today, and we are expanding in different geographies through that process.
Thank you, Ashish. Can we have Ankur tell us more about Vadu?
Sure. Thanks, Lavanya. Am I audible? Hello?
Yeah.
And bandwidth costs for video distribution. We're disrupting video streaming using hybrid peer-to-peer solution and super resolution. And we are available as an SDK integration for your apps, website, set-top boxes, and even smart TVs. Yeah, thanks.
Our fourth startup, Auto Italy, will be joining us in some time. In the meantime, we can begin with the Fireside chat for a day. So what I'd like to put on the table is COVID-19 and its impact on the tech industry. Nikhil, would you like to start with your views on the same?
Hey, hi. I think I lost you in the last bit. I understand the question is COVID-19 impact on technology. Just want a quick feedback if video plus audio is okay, or should I turn off the video?
Uh,
It's fine, great. Okay, thanks. Okay, so have read a lot about what's happening and how the technology domain of things. So I have some perspective. So I just thought it'd be good to share that. So firstly, it's more of a disclaimer warning. How much ever we look to seek opportunities in what's happening, I think we all must first admit that what the world is going through is not something that any of us wants to have, right? It's a humanitarian crisis, it's a health crisis, and at the end of the day it has a huge negative impact on the economy, right? So while we can see some tailwind opportunities, certain sectors looking to cash in into this opportunity, overall for the society it's a step backwards, and that's going to be a challenge for all of us in the next, let's say, 5 or 10 decades, is my personal opinion. I personally am in a sector which has been spoken about to have a positive impact, which is industrial automation, or automation of manual labor. And it's quite understandable why many would assume or anticipate that the focus of manufacturing companies and other companies that are very heavily dependent on manual labor will eventually or right now are realizing the need for automation due to the non-availability of manual labor, the perils of localized not non-distributed supply chains and manufacturing, and hence there is a lot of talk about how to get investments into manual labor automation. So that's good for us, and if I look at it from a 5-year or a 10-year perspective, that's a great thing. But at the end of the day, even any kind of investment needs capital consolidation, and that's going to take some time, right? So that's one first primary opinion that I have, that regardless of what sector you're in, I think we're all in this boat where we shouldn't have ideally been, and we can really get out of that. That said, there are of course definitely areas that will have some uptake, some kind of tailwind. One of the things, like I mentioned, for us is any kind of automation, any kind of process automation. there are going to be a lot of lifestyle changes, and any technology that focuses on these lifestyle changes and leverages those lifestyle changes, it might be something that might work out, right? So, for instance, today I was driving past Indranagar and Bangalore, which used to be filled with eateries, and most of them are lying dormant. And then I spotted a few cloud kitchens, right? So kitchens that do not have spaces to serve people, but then they can cook and then use Swiggy or Zomato to deliver. And any business that embraces that would kind of pick up. So there's going to be a lot of transformation, in my opinion, and that transformation probably is going to be here to stay. And as long as we are conversant of that, and we are really conscious of that, and adapt ourselves to the changing lifestyles of people, we should do good. And at the same time, if we are in a boat where we've invested quite a lot of effort in a certain area of technology, in certain area of business models, we should be okay to give us that time, because the world really needs that time to recover, and we should be okay to I kind of I'm a little afraid of people pivoting too soon, just to leverage certain immediate opportunities, because what's happening today might not. It's a very dynamic scenario. It's not going to be the same tomorrow, so we need to be really careful of that. Is my first thoughts.
Thank you, Nikhil. Harshal, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I agree with Nikhil that the current scenario is very difficult, and the first thing that we need to do is we need to be very agile. There is a lot of pessimism in the atmosphere, and businesses they are uh, trying very hard to survive. We have a lot of clients in event management space and in travel space. They think that it's an end of road for them, and they immediately pivoted to some other businesses. But like Nikhil said, I agree that you should not quickly think of pivoting to something else, and think of doing some kind of innovation in the current industry. We have seen that a lot of businesses, because the things have changed so dramatically, they have started innovating. They have started coming up with new solutions. Like recently, like we know that all the shopping malls are closed. So you have seen that the stores like Lifestyle and all those retail stores, they have started coming and setting up their shops within the societies, within the housing societies. So desperate times need desperate measures, but we need to be more innovative rather than taking very quick decisions uh, and getting into that panic mode, which affects the ability to take right decisions. So yes, we need to adopt, we need to innovate, and we need to believe that this time will also pass, because I believe that if it had lasted for an year or more than that, then there will be a permanent change in behavior of the consumers. But since we are hearing the news of vaccine coming up very soon, so I think that it will be a matter of time. We'll go back to our original ways. Definitely, there will be certain industries that will change, but I think that we'll go back to our previous ways very soon. Lavanya, I think you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. Do Thank you for that, Harshal. Do
Lavanya, you have a lot of audio problems still. I think it's better you switch off your video.
uh, on that, do any of the startups have anything to add on that topic, or any questions they'd further like to ask Nikhil and Harshal?
COVID has been death. I think we should move on.
Yeah.
Is Lavanya lost connection or something?
I think she's having an internet issue. So no problem. We'll move on to the next question.
Yeah.
So Lavanya.
Yes. Yes. So question application. Harshal, would you like to take this?
Lavanya, you're not audible.
Harshal, would you like to
If
take
I
up
may,
this
I'll
question?
address
Am I
the question.
audible?
Lara, we lost you. I could not hear the question.
Okay, so the question is basically there has been a lot of news around GPT-3 and its initial release. So, what's the perception and application of artificial intelligence post GPT-3?
Yeah,
So
see,
that's the
Rachna,
question.
yeah, the thing is that I belong to software industry, okay, and our product is primarily a fintech product. So to be very honest, I don't have a lot of knowledge about artificial intelligence and other parts of it or the implications in manufacturing. So I think I'll skip this question and I'll let someone else to answer this who has more knowledge about this. Maybe.
Yeah, so yeah, in fact, on email even I had kind of declined to answer this question specifically. But I'm assuming that the rest of the guys who were participants in Conquest might have, or one of them at least might have posed this question. So I just had like one very high level opinion, right? And we are in the world of, I mean, we are doing AI. We're doing machine learning, we're doing deep learning, we're doing reinforcement learning, and the specific terminology that we currently the question kind of pertains, which is GPT-3, which is probably some set of technologies. I come from a world, and I believe anybody who's been researching AI for long enough kind of agree with me that the entire world of AI is a very nascent field, right? It's if control systems has been researched and spoken about and worked upon, and that's what kind of is the basis of most of the processes that we have in automation today, and this has been happening for the last almost century, right? And that time frame, AI is very nascent, and what's relevant last year is not relevant today, and it's a very highly dynamic thing. So my personal advice, if any of you guys are looking at these specific technologies and getting worried if some of these technologies are going to make you redundant, etc., the entire field is a dynamic field. So and I don't think any of us, and I would go on to say not the Googles, not the Facebooks, not the Apples of the world have had AI figured, right? And hence no AI is a threat for us, as long as we are sure that we are working on it from first principles, from fundamentals, and as long as we are what really matters in the AI world is the application that you're trying to solve, right? The customer at the end of the day, in most of the scenarios, doesn't care whether there's a specific technology behind that application or not. Right, and so if you're out to solve a specific customer problem, that specific customer problem requires certain aspects of AI and certain aspects of machine learning, which you need to innovate on. Great, and I think there's enough room for all of us to just keep innovating. I don't think we should leave it to the fangs to solve AI. All of us have our rights to solve it. So I really don't know anything about GPT-3 because that's more from a natural language processing and stuff like that. So we are more into the vision side of things. But I do not think that any such technology should be much of a concern from a business planning standpoint.
Okay, Ashish, what's your perspective on this?
I think in general, there's typically a lot of hype when one particular network does something phenomenal. We saw that even with Vision in the last probably 4 years. So I agree with what Nikhil said. I don't think these are things that impact. I mean, I'm sure people can probably create some funky business models around this and launch some interesting microservice based solutions or whatever else. But I don't think it's of really consequence, at least to this forum that we have right now, in my opinion.
I guess GPT-3 being a newborn technology, applying it or like using it as an application for particular services is not really the topic that we need to talk on right now because it's too new. So let's moving on to the next question. So in increasing, like we can see that people are moving towards serving the society and coming up with new ways in technology to do the same. So what do you think, and how do you think artificial intelligence can help in that and enhance the particular service sector?
I think it's an opinion based question, so I can give you my opinion. I think AI or any technology will only succeed as long as it's enhancing and augmenting. Right? Those are the two key words for me. Not replacing as much, but enhancing and augmenting. Right? Because I don't think we are at that stage where machines can completely replace humans. Humans can evolve to newer roles that machines can make redundant. And that should certainly be always the endeavor, because we shouldn't waste our time doing things that machines can do for us, right? So I'm sure AI will have social impacts over time, but they will be slow and steady and very sectorial. It'll go sector by sector. I don't think it's going to sweep the world and do something phenomenal. And we've seen that, I think, over the last many years. It's been around for a while now already. So
Yeah.
that's my view.
And Harshal and Nikhil, what are your perspectives on the same?
Yeah, I feel that AI feeds on the amount of data. So, like Ashish said, there it could be a sectorial. So, for example, healthcare, if we collect a huge amount of data, then AI can play a big role. Helping us to sort out that data. Navigating through that data and coming up with some insights that are actionable, or some analytics or some stats that you can use to create or build solutions on top of that. So any field where we collect a huge amount of data, AI will definitely going to help. But smaller startups where data is very limited, then I feel that it's just another fancy word of telling the world that we use AI. That's my opinion.
Right. So I have a couple of perspectives, and this could be both of these perspectives are slightly philosophical. Right. So one is the entire concept of AI. Right. It's artificial intelligence. Both of these terms are not really well defined. We really, as humans, have not really figured out what intelligence is. Artificial is a very arguable term. Right. Like for instance, what we build houses and we call houses artificial. Ants build houses as well, but we call those ant houses natural, right? So it's very human thing to call it artificial or natural. So artificial intelligence itself is like a really broad evolving subject, right? There's no specific, there's no this is AI, right? And there's no way for you to define that. Even the entire thing of artificial general intelligence is very loosely framed. So what we understand as AI today are basically a set of tools. And these tools are just technologies that you use for a variety of applications. So it could be like, so right now the latest is deep neural networks. Within that variety of deep neural networks, CNNs, GANs, different types of networks, reinforcement learning, etc., etc. So these are all just tools. Yeah, so that's one perspective. So at the end of the day, whatever you're doing with AI, realization that AI is going to be a tool, right? The second perspective is from a philosophy standpoint, what is social service, right? So in social service is going to be a spectrum of social service. In my opinion, every corporation that is really serving somebody's needs is actually social service, except probably the only arguable ones that I can think of are things like cigarettes and alcohol and those kind of businesses. But otherwise, if you're really solving somebody's need, then you're kind of doing some kind of social service with the eventual goal of improving the livelihood of everybody, right? And everyone has to like progress, prosper, become richer, etc. Now when I put these two together, what is really happening is the tools that are composite of what is called AI, which is currently a very evolving subject, is helping corporations accelerate their ability to deliver value to their customers, right? And hence, we are in a very interesting time, because the rate at which corporations or organizations can grow by embracing some of these technologies that are enabling them to scale a lot faster than what they used to do before, we are effectively accelerating the growth of society as a whole. And when the growth of society as a whole, what I mean, as corporations become bigger, they're going to employ more people, they're going to give more salaries, people are going to become richer, the world is going to become, the poverty is going to be elevated. So overall, it's like that's the grand stage in my view, right? So in the grand stage, AI as a tool is accelerating corporations, and as corporations accelerate, people get out of poverty, people become more prosperous, and that's the bigger picture of it. Of course, more handy examples, if you there definitely be few areas, right, like for instance, your entire COVID tracing and stuff like that, right? So a lot of it you couldn't have done before in the scale that you can do today, and these are more immediate humanitarian, poverty alleviation or health or education related subjects, which are more the need of the hour. In all of these cases, AI as a tool or is something that will have immense impact, and the impact is in terms of us being able to do it at a scale that we could never think of before. That's my 2 cents.
I think one of the things to be wary about, which I think both Nikhil and Harshal, you guys hit upon, is data and to me privacy, actually, because you spoke about contact tracing as well. So one of the key concerns with AI that I personally have is uh, harvesting my personal data in a way which can exploit me, right? And that exploitation could be various ways. It could be the best way Google has done it, which is to make me the product, or Facebook has done it. Or there are other ways where I can be made the product in different sectors again, right? So I think it's very important to, while embracing these technologies, in my opinion, that people look at how to do this while maintaining consumer privacy or the consideration while adopting these tools, in my opinion. And there are ways you can, of course, gather data by buying it, but there are also ways to do a lot of training on the edge, which is what we fundamentally believe in, which is why we actually built our platform Coco, because we do edge intelligence. And the way we do edge intelligence is we don't use the cloud for anything. In fact, we create a mesh network. So, Nikhil, for example, I see your vision robots. If they have to share inferences with each other, right? Coco actually makes that happen by creating a peer-to-peer, hybrid peer-to-peer network, right? So
Right.
I think those kinds of approaches, I think, are going to become pretty evolving in the future, and it's very important to use those in our.
Yeah, my perspective on that is, if you call about the data, specifically with, like, as Ashish mentioned, with Facebook, or as Nikhil mentioned, COVID related issues. So the AI is really matured in the data perspective, but when it comes to vision, so still AI needs to mature. Probably in the next decade, it will improve a lot, and that's going to be really a case for human replacement, we can say. Like, just to give a simple case study, if you look at the autonomous car, it's been happening from past 7 to 8 years now, and there's no real, nobody has yet, come out and said that their car is completely autonomous. So there is nothing really there, and some of the companies which put in a lot of money, some of them have shut the shops in the US, basically. So it's in a very nascent stage, specifically with the vision. And even in our case, like where we are doing smart factory transformation with the identifying defects, there are a lot of parameters we depend on, like the lighting, the reflections, and how are we training the model. How is it going to be efficient when it comes to multiple different products that are going to introduce in the system. So there are a few areas of unanswered questions there. So it's going to be really nascent stages, as I said. But then when it comes to data, definitely there's a lot of improvements, especially with the way chatbots are functioning today. It's really improved there, and also anything you give as a data, and you need to expect that to give you back results. I think there AI has matured quite a lot. So that's my take on this.
To add to that, I think health and the social sector, in terms of making policy, would be the two sectors that can see a lot of disruption if we apply machine learning and AI and actually have a positive impact. But right now, the progress we've seen is in terms of just data harvesting on search, social, and as well as adding filters over your face on cameras on these phones. So these are the progress we've seen in AI, sort of more so than in a lot of sectors where there is actually needed. In terms of our startup, we do use machine learning to upscale video content. So you can see almost 40 to 50% saving in the bandwidth distribution. So we can distribute, say, 480 pixel video over a network and upscale that on a mobile phone to a 720 pixel video. So applications such as these can actually help to better use the current physical infrastructure to support higher resolution and high quality content.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great use case. Um,
And now that we've talked about the question, do the startups have some other queries or questions that they want to get addressed by the founders?
so maybe I should ask Nikhil something, because I see some synergies in at least the type of startup. So Nikhil, how has your experience been with regards to fundraising in India? And actually, one of the challenges I've faced over the last 1 year doing fundraising is there seems to be this sort of fascination with B2C consumer internet startups where there's a lot of mindset on technology cannot be innovated in India, it should be innovated abroad. And I've actually been said that, why aren't you doing milk transportation? I'm sure it's a great sector to be in, and I'm sure there's a lot of money to be made organizing it, but it's not of interest to me. And that kind of approach has sort of left me uh, pretty pissed off with the with the Indian investor mindset. And I've actually gotten forced to go abroad, and I've set up shop now in the US, and I'm starting fundraising there as soon as the pandemic piece ends up, right? So I want to ask you how you went about. Like, are you Indian funded, or have you actually raised funding outside, and what your experience?
Sure, great. Yeah, so my experience has been similar, except that the I don't know if you could call it a success. We did one successful fundraise about a year back, and this we did from Indian investors, and it took us a while to figure out the ecosystem. So a couple of perspectives, a couple of learnings that we went through while we did our fundraise. So you mentioned there is that fascination for B2C today in the Indian startup VC world, right? Which is basically your typical early stage investments, seed, pre-series A, series A kind of guys, up to your Sequoia, Axel kind of guys. So there is a fascination for two domains. So it's not just B2C, it's B2C and B2B SaaS, right? So there are two specific domains. As long as you're B2C or B2B SaaS, you're okay. Again, in B2C also there is further specification. It's not that all B2C is VC friendly. It's largely driven by certain themes, and that certain theme more or less revolves around the e-commerce story, and so e-commerce allied is what the VCs have kind of been more comfortable with, right? So B2B SaaS or B2C is great. If not, you're in trouble. The but from that point of view, I would also like to caution that it's not unlike the US is any different in their fascination. It's just that the US is so much bigger in terms of the VC market that you end up finding a lot more guys who are okay doing different or contrarian bets, right? So if you look at the percentage of investments as a percentage of the total VC investments happening in each of those geographies, deep tech investments even in the US is really low, right? The percentage was pretty low. Except that it's the entire market is so big that you end up finding, and you probably need 500,000 or million or up to 5 million. It's still fine. So what we went through is we went through like a fairly longish round of understanding what the VCs it was what the VC ecosystem is, and finally ended up identifying some outliers, the few very niche specific seed funds who are comfortable looking at deep tech space. In deep tech space, again, there are certain themes, right? So certain themes like EV and space tech is a little bit more favorite for these deep tech VCs than anything else. So ours is in robotics. We're able to like leverage some of the robotics coolness associated with the term robotics. So we did raise. We are an Indian company. We did raise from Indian VCs. All the VC details are. I mean, you can. It's there online. You can look at a Crunchbase or something like that. So with these guys, we still had to do a lot of groundwork and background work, right? So we raised our seed fund after being in business for about 4 years, and we didn't even start raising our fund the day we set shop. So we did a lot of background capability building, proof of concept, variety of things, working with real life customers. So it's definitely a longer gestation period. So that had been a journey that I think in India there are very specific few niche companies. At the end of the day, I think for all of us who are looking at technology innovations, and if you're looking at and if your technology innovation and your company and if you identify that VC is something inevitable for you, right? And there are other ways of funding your startup apart from customers as well. If there are other areas again, for a startup, it's either customers, friends and family, or VCs. In very rare cases, you can get some strategic guys partner you very early on. Ps etc will not even like consider. So what we have kind of I think it's good for any business to think that way, is to eventually not identify yourself as a deep tech company. Identify yourself as a business proposition in the first place, right? So it is a fact that a lot of us have to invest significantly in technology, and that's an interest, and that's something that is an initial delta, right? And let's say I go and say, hey, I need $5 million before I can get a world class product out into the market. Once I get there, it's a completely business proposition, right? After that, it's just that with the amount of money that I have, I'm going to make this much amount of money, and this much amount of, if I'm making this much amount of money, I can do an X multiplication on it to get my valuation and eventually give you the return, right? So every VC, even the lowest level deep tech VC, has to be sold the business strategy at the highest level. And if you can figure out that layer, if you can figure out, or if you're able to establish on paper that if should you figure out this technology, you can be a $500 million valued company or $1 billion valued company at some point of time on the merit of the fact that you're getting revenues and you're making profits. Then it might be easier for you to justify that, hey, for me to do that, I need to surpass that initial technology delta or technology gap that needs to be filled, and that technology gap requires this many amount of millions of dollars. And as long as that's within an acceptable range, like let's say a couple of $1 million or $5 million, I think you will eventually find a bunch of guys who are interested in that. But I would not discourage you from like looking in the US. I think you should look in the US right away. We are looking in the US for our next round. and I don't think, and even if we do around in India, it'll be smallish compared to what we could potentially do in the US. And that's how the world is today. You're better off raising your deep tech investments from the US than in India.
Great, thanks for that insight. And Nikhil, just a follow up. Were you able to raise funding before you had any revenues, or were you needing to build some revenues for it?
No, we raised entirely for an R&D purpose. The money that we raised about 5.5 crores. All of it, we didn't even promise revenues after the 5.5 crores. So we raised pre-revenues, and we raised for being pre-revenue. It doesn't happen often. I think what we had to go through, so we had to do a couple of things. One is spend that amount of time, that 4 years on our own, in addition to 4 years of relevant experience in a corporate role before that. So that we got a significant amount of customer LOIs and intents, right? If not confirm purchase orders. So that we had to do. So at the end of the day, nothing sells like a customer interest, right? So if that customer interest need not be revenues, that you can find innovative ways to establish that there is customer interest, right? So one of the ways is LOIs. The other way is to get somebody who can attest that there is customer interest in this on your board or on your advisory panel. So there are ways in which you can try to bridge that gap of not having revenues, but have some other way of justifying. So in our in our current pitches, we have both our primary references as well as what's happening across the world, what people are saying. So I have like quotes from big guys on why this technology is good to be built. Now that's, you just have to it's marketing, right? So you need to be able to market that there is customer interest in your product, and it need not be revenues.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So Nikhil, this is very interesting. So, like you said that we have invested a lot in R&D. So, after having raised all the funds right now, so is there any pressure to convert that research into some kind of sales? And there is a pressure to hire more sales guys than research guys, or you have that freedom to invest more in R&D even after raising so much money?
Sure. So I can speak for myself because I have a bunch of investors whose names are again public. There are two things, right? Ideally, a venture capitalist is a minority investor. So at the end of the day, all he can do is add value in what the way he can, and he really doesn't have statutory powers to put pressure, right? He doesn't really have any controlling stake, and that's what a VC really wants as well. But that's never the usual case, right? The usual case is there are other passive ways in which you can put pressure. And the passive ways in which a VC can put pressure is in what happens for your next round, right? So if, let's say, a VC does not participate in the next round, all right? Somebody who's invested in me chooses not to participate in my next round, and that's a really bad thing for me, because the other investor who's coming in next is going to ask, why our current investor is not putting in more money, right? And they're the ones who know your business in and out, and if they don't trust to put in more money, what do you do? So as such, as founders, once you've taken money from VC, I think you take the pressure on you yourself, right? In order to make sure that the guys that you have invested, and you kind of have to pamper them. You kind of have to ensure that they revere you, and they think you're the guys that can make their money grow. And so you're going to take pressure on yourself, definitely, even if the investors don't put that pressure on their own. But I think what we can recognize and realize, and how we can play that to our advantage, is at the end of the day, the investor does not want you to go. He doesn't care about whether you're making revenues or good by hiring sales people or hiring marketing people or increasing your R&D folks. All he cares of is that whether the money that he has invested in is growing at a timely interval or not, right? So he needs two things. One is there is a rate of growth, right? So his money has to grow to a certain extent within a specific amount of time, right? So typically, let's say a VC fund has a 5 to 7 year or maybe 10 year if you're a bigger fund life cycle. So within that 10 year, the VC has to return all of that money to their limited partners or LPs, and they have to return it with 2x or a 3x multiple, and they've diversified that over a specific number of startups. So they're really expecting one or two startups to really hit it off. So what the VC needs is that some kind of indication that eventually they might get that return from you. And they also need some timely validation, right? So that's one thing that they will expect. So you cannot say that although they're going to be invested with you for 7 years, you can't say that I'm going to take your money today and my next exit duration for you is 7 years hence, right? So they would kind of need a lot more periodic way of estimating that growth is happening. The only way in which they can estimate that is you doing further fundraisers. So effectively, you also get that pressure of once you've raised money today, you will be pressurized to raise more money in the future, or find a way to get an exit for the investor, which is either through an acquisition or an IPO. IPO we can all like safely park for a much future date. So it's either an acquisition or a good fundraise now. So when we did our fundraise, let's say a year back, the current expectation for our investors is that we do another fundraise, let's say in this year, right? This from now to from 1 year from now. Within 1 year from now, I need to do a next fundraise with a significant amount of valuation raise, and that will be an expectation. So all of that, I'd be lying if to say that there's no pressure. The pressure in many times is taken by yourself by being cognizant of the fact that what all ways they can kind of ruin your life. But at the same time, when you know what their expectation is, you might be able to just modify, or you'll have to sell to that your current investor, saying that, hey, revenues is not what is going to give you valuation. So like that's what we're kind of doing right now. So we are in a play where IP is of better value for you than revenues. And let's say and let's say I convince you of that, right? And I can convince you that there is one investor or 5 investors who's more interested in me solving this very tough problem technically than taking it to market, because that guy is already sure that I will eventually take it to market. Let's say I'm able to establish that, then he doesn't care, right? I mean, he just wants you to grow his money, and they really don't care. And this is what most of the consumer startups also have been doing, right? Most of the consumer startups have not been pre-revenues or very low revenues for a really long time. But the selling pitch is that my value is consistently increasing, and it'll increase to a stage after 5 years. It's so high, and maybe I can monetize at that point of time. So many consumer startups function that way, right? With very low revenue or monetization base. Most of your edtech startups are like that today, right? And they really don't make a lot of money. And investors are okay with that as long as you have a very clear story behind what you're doing. That whatever you're doing is increasing the value of the money that they have put in.
Got it.
Sorry if I took a long time to answer that.
That's it's very insightful. So in your space, the IP is the key rather than getting more customers on board.
Yeah, that's what we believe, and that's what we need to make our investors believe as well. They're not going to come understanding that. I don't think they understood that when they put their money in. It's a constant, it's a nurturing process. Right? We need to. It's consider them your star employee. Invest in them. Invest in educating them about your vision and what you're thinking continuously. So we have 2 co-founders. So my co-founder takes care of the technology. I probably spend about 20 to 30% of my time worrying about what my investors are thinking, and that's inevitable.
Yeah. Interesting. Thanks, man.
Hi Nikhil, this is Ankur.
Hi, Ankur.
Yeah. So, what was the typical time you took to raise the seed fund, and also in terms of if you want to convince investors that IP is the core factor that will determine your value, what are the proxies you were showing to the investors that that's true?
Sure. So I'll tell you what our timeline was, and it need not be that everybody goes through that. So some of what our timelines were also the fact that we were inexperienced in understanding what the VC world was. And if I look hindsight, if I had somebody to tell me not to do some things, I could have done it faster. So we took from the day we decided to start that we need to talk to VCs to getting the money in the bank was about a year, right? And a good portion of it, about 3 to 4 months, was actually post term sheet, right? So a term sheet negotiation, getting things due diligence done, all of that itself is about a 3 to 4 month process. So let's say 6 to 8 months to like really figure out the VC world and identify who are the guys who would even put some money in you, right? So that's the timeline that we went through. We were okay with that eventually, because we ended up closing the round. We wouldn't have been okay. We would have been super pissed if nothing happened. So what are the proxies? Like I mentioned, I think this is still true. There might be few VCs that are thinking otherwise. We did not sell IP alone while doing the fundraise, right? So it was IP plus a very, very strong business proposition on paper, right? So, and to justify the business proposition on paper, we had done a lot of background research, and right from what we did in our, so I was working, my co-founder and I were working for National Instruments, and relevant domain, so we knew a lot of things in that. So we worked on our own as a more like a consulting kind of a thing, services revenues, doing very tough projects on a custom basis for 2.5 years. So we said, okay, hey, all of these customers are there. We actually got a letter of intent from a customer, right? So none of this is IP related. So what we said is that, hey, this is the business proposition. For this business proposition, these are the validations that I've got from the market, from whatever access that I have. We come from a pedigree that is kind of relevant to what we're doing. So and we kind of painted the picture saying that this is a tough enough problem to solve, right? Like across the world, this is a tough enough problem to solve, and perhaps we are the right guys to solve it, right? So in fact, like I'll just give you one example. If we were so most of these VCs kind of do tech due diligences, and when you are kind of when they're kind of interested in you, they make you speak to a lot of people that they trust to figure out what they think of, right? And one of the AI startup, premier AI startup guy, he told us, and I am assuming he told our investor as well, this statement saying that, hey, there are technical risks in solving this problem, but this problem is important to solve, and who better to attempt this problem than you, right? And that's a statement that came from him, right? And if you're able to get that statement from somebody, right, I think that's a very powerful thing to do. So like, okay, there's a business proposition, there's a really tough technology to build, and these guys perhaps are the best people to even attempt it, right? They might fail, but anybody else will fail even worse, right? So why not take a bet on these guys? And so that's pretty much what we did. So when we did raise our fundraise, so we said, okay, I'm going to use all the money to build the technology, in view that this technology has this kind of a business proposition, and that's what really got us that money. Post raising the fund, we continue to let's say reinforce the fact that we're doing that IP, because before the fundraise, they don't really understand that IP, right? Like none of these VCs, even if they call themselves deep tech VCs, are not going to really understand the tech. Sure. So you're going to, and you cannot do that even if you spend when I say I spent a year, I didn't spend a year with one guy, right? I spent a year with a plethora of guys, practically spent a few days with each of those guys who invested in me. So it's not enough time to really get them really invested in the tech, and they don't have that much amount of time to go so deep into the tech. So after that, it's like on a monthly basis, you keep reinforcing the fact that this is relevant tech, you need to invest in this tech, relevant tech, invest in the tech, so that they continue to stay invested in you. So my only goal with my current investors is that when I'm doing my next round of funding, even if I'm pre-revenues, they are so convinced about the tech that they have to blindly put money again, right? And they need to do that because they just think that the tech is awesome, and that's what we kind of do. So when we raise the fund, it's not a pure IP play. I think it's going to be really hard sell if it's a pure IP play without a business proposition in place. And when we are going to do our next fundraise, even though we might do it pre-revenues, it's going to be the same case. So we're going to like hard sell the business proposition first, and then justify the fact that I need to invest further in tech and R&D.
Sure. Thanks for that.
How many patents have you guys filed?
0. So for us, okay, so there are two angles to it. Patents, is it something that you really need to protect your business? In most aspects, no. right? So in fact, some of the best innovations aren't patented and kept trade secrets instead, because the moment you patent it, everybody can look at that patent and they will reverse engineer it, right? And they're going to find a way around that patent. They're going to make it different enough to get that patent past circumnavigated. So from an intellectual property protection standpoint, the entire world of patent, US, India, anywhere in the world, my personal belief is not really the case. So second thing that you'll have to really look at whether you need a patent or not, is whether that's giving you some kind of credibility, some kind of identity, some kind of metric for investors to value, right? That in our current understanding, at least the investors in India really don't consider it a valuation metric. So that's not really helping you gain any valuation metric. There's only one area that we are consciously looking at, and we will invest in. So right now, we are investing in getting a few core patents in place, and we're doing that. Let's say over the next 6 months, we'll have a few patents applied, and just forgotten about whenever it gets granted, let it get granted. And that perspective might be if you're looking at an acquisition, right? If you're looking to get acquired by a strategic buyer who is interested in the tech that you're building. At that point of time, patents kind of thing, you can kind of play your patents. So you can say these kind of patents is really core to what we're building, and by acquiring me, you get these patents. So regardless of what you want to do with our business, this patents is useful for you, and then go ahead. So the only places where we've seen patents being valued is in acquisitions, and acquisitions by tech companies, VCs, PEs. Your regular financial world, I don't think care a lot about patents, and we've dabbled with it for a really long time. We constantly felt a little, because we wanted to identify ourselves as a really deep tech company. So one of the things, so our equivalents, right? So guys who are trying to solve similar problems like what we're solving, are guys who have done PhDs in MIT, Stanford, kind of a thing, right? So we were like, Bits Pilani, okay, and then my co-founder was from Amrita. He's the tech guy. In India, that didn't really have that R&D aura so much, right? I don't think even Bits Pilani has an R&D aura at all. So we were like constantly thinking, oh no, does it really, will we get a significant perception advantage by filing a lot of patents or publishing a lot of papers in journals and stuff like that? And we did a lot of evaluation, finally figured out that at least in the Indian ecosystem of VCs, I that doesn't sell. What really sells is marketing and branding, and customer validation. So we decided to not really worry about it and just invest a little bit of our time and effort and money to secure some of the core patents in which we are in put it in process. So when we raised our funding, we didn't have patents.
So in the follow-up round that you're planning to do in the US, your IP is defined in terms of your trade secrets, know-how.
Yeah. So I mean, we might do a pre-follow-up or pre-series round with Indian investors as well. So that's still evolving. We don't know. Again, so far might be wrong. We don't know the US VC world as much as we know the Indian VC world. Again, but for the kind of ticket sizes that we might be looking at from a US investor, right? So after you've done your first round of funding, most of those investors, they might value. I mean, so they might look at patents from a differentiation standpoint, but that patents is not what they're going to invest in. Is our perception, especially in our field, right? There might be certain fields that are different, and I might not be the right person to generalize this across fields. For instance, like perhaps something like life sciences, medicines, etc. If not patents, whatever is the equivalent of patents to get some kind of rights on that formulation. We know that there is a significant amount of valuation that VCs do in our field, in vision, in robotics. I still think even the US guys are not going to value the patents. So we are still going to go to them with a story. We are going to go to them with customer validations, and with a lot of marketing and branding behind us to justify that we will take it to market. It's just the business story, right? So, like I said, at the end of the day, and this is what one of our current VCs just told last week to us. Can you paint a story, a very convincing story, that within 5 to 7 years, let's say, you can reach about $50 million in revenue, right? Just keep it $50 million of revenue, and in your field and in AI, put a 10x valuation. So you're a $500 million valued company in the next 5 years. If you're able to paint that and you're very convincing, say that this is the concrete steps that I'm going to take in the next 5 years to be a $50 million company, that's when I think we become fundable. And yeah, patents etc. is additional currency that we might have to throw around, but it's change, right? It's just a few pennies.
So we've exceeded the time limit a bit, so I think we'll have to stop here. I hope the session and the founders fueled your curiosity and gave you valuable insight in startups. And we're really grateful to have you, Nikhil and Harshal. Thank you for being here and talking with the startups. And all the best to the startups for further rounds of Conquest. And now we can end the session.
All the best, guys.
Hey, thanks a lot for your
Thanks.
Thanks, Nikhil. Thanks, Harsh.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. Good day.